Hey friends, yeah, so sorry I'm late. I'm streaming from my MacBook today. Normally I use my PC, but as we all love with PCs, they update all the time and it takes forever to update, and that's what I wanted to do today. So here we are. You may have noticed that I changed my intro. It says live videos instead of short videos. Yeah, because my videos are not short. I initially intended dev tips to be like a 3 minute tops thing. That's not how it works. When it's off the cuff, I keep on talking, and then I answer your questions and stuff too. So there you have it. Okay, so I got a question from, actually I think Igor is watching. Hello, Igor. It is he's building a slider with arrows to show the next content. The arrows need to only show when needed if there's items to see. Did it with using hooks. Wanted to see what I thought of their hooks implementation, because hooks is new and it's always good to get us a check on things when we're using new things. So it's pretty short. You can like select different items in here, and then you can go through each one of these slides, I guess. So let's just review the hooks and see where we're at. What I'm going to do, actually, I'm going to fork this so I can minimize the file editor and get myself a little bit more room on this thing. I'm also going to save it so that it can, oh, never mind. Huh, that's weird. What happened to my prettier settings? That's all right. That's all right. No single quotes, all, and yeah. Oh, and no bracket spacing. There we go. Those are my settings. Okay, there you go. So we have, let's look at where we're rendering first. That's what I like to do. So we've got our app, and with the app that returns a list, and we've got items, and that just is a list of items. And yeah, this is actually, lots of people don't know this. With array.from, you can provide it an object that looks like an array. All that it really needs is a length property. And then it'll take all the index values and assign those. So this is, you can use this with a node list or anything that looks kind of like an array that has a length property and then properties at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever. You can convert it into an array. But the thing lots of people don't know is the second argument acts as a map function. So you can take the things that were in that array looking thing and map them to values for your items. So that's pretty cool. So good on you, Igor, for that. So yeah, we've got our list, and then we, for each of the items, we're going to make a little box. And so without looking at anything else, my presumption is this is the box, and then this is the list component. So if we're to draw lines, so the list is in control of these arrows. Let's look at this list first. So going up to the list. So it's going, the list is going to count its children, so that presumably so it knows whether it needs to have an arrow on the left here, and then whether it needs to know an arrow on the right. That seems pretty legit to me. It also has this visible items, which is configurable. So if I set that to 3, yeah, nice. So then we've got our ref. We initialize it to null, which is fine. I often won't initialize it, but you can initialize it to null. Probably works better with TypeScript that way. I don't know. I haven't actually done a whole lot of TypeScript with hooks yet. So, but yeah, then we've got something to manage our scroll position, whether or not we should show the left or the right arrow. My initial impression is that those could be derived values. They don't need to be in state, but let's just see. Scroll width, infinity. Whoa. Okay. And the scroll step is 0. So here is a first question, whether or not we should use layout effect to set the scroll width and the scroll step. So here we're actually doing DOM measurement, and so we can't like ref.current right now in the first render. Well, let's just read this as if we're going through the first render. Ref.current is going to be null because that's what you're initializing it to, and you can't initialize it to the actual node anyway. And my guess is we're looking here. Let's let's inspect this really quick to see whether or not this thing, what the width of this thing is. Yeah, it looks like the way that this is styled. So it's position relative. Oh goodness, don't have enough room. Here we go. So we've got, I think this is our list component. This is the where we're rendering the boxes. That's where we're rendering the button. And so this is just the actual width of the container. But it looks like we are still rendering the rest of these items in here where we say that the overflow is hidden. Scroll behavior smooth. That's cool. I had no idea that scroll behavior smooth would do that. I thought that was some like fancy CSS magic going on there, but apparently not. That's cool. Okay, so yeah, then we are just rendering each one of these. Yeah, and doing some magic CSS to make it so that they show up properly, and they have a margin right of 12 pixels so that they have that gap. And then the width is calculated so that it fills the whole width of the container plus the gap, or minus the gap, I guess. That's clever. Yeah, nice. Okay, so with that out of the way and figured out how that's working, what we need to do is we need to determine the width of this container, and I'm not exactly sure why, so we'll look at that here in a second. But then the scroll step is that width divided by the children plus 6. That 6, I'm guessing, is for the margin. Each one of the children accounts for 6 pixels between these two. So that seems to make sense. So this is the amount of scroll that we want the container that contains these boxes to scroll as we click on this. Okay, so I'm guessing we're going to be setting the some style on that. Okay, yeah, the scroll left. Nice. Okay, so I think this is right. So you could, depending on what you do with these values, you could probably just use a regular use effect. The only time you really need to use layout effect is if you're going to be manipulating the DOM. So what happens is let's say that we're using a jQuery plugin that turns our div into a date picker or something, or I don't know, maybe it's not just a div, but it's like all like we have the arrows pointing here and whatever, so it's actually laid out. So if you were to just lay it out without the jQuery plugin applying its magic to it, then it would look funky, right? And so you want to not show the user that thing until after the jQuery DOM manipulation has happened, and then you want to render that to the page. So that would be a situation where you use layout effect, because use layout effect is going to run before the user sees anything, whereas use effect, it will run very quickly, but it doesn't necessarily run immediately. So I'm thinking I think you can just go with use effect, but I might be wrong. We'll keep on looking, but I'm pretty sure since you're not actually doing any DOM manipulation in here, then you should be okay with just a regular use effect. Okay, so then we've got another use effect where we're setting the scroll left to that scroll position, which is stored in state. Okay, I think that makes sense. And then we set whether or not we should show the left or the right arrow based off of whether that scroll position is greater than or greater than or 0, and then similarly for the right arrow. So this right here, I'm pretty sure we could just change this right here. We'll say const show left arrow equals scroll position greater than 0, and show right arrow and then we can get rid of that and get rid of those, and in fact get rid of, well, no, we'll leave that. Actually, we'll get rid of all this stuff and scroll position. Yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Now I'm wondering if maybe we don't need the scroll position in state though. That scroll position, No, okay, it does need to be in state because it happens when you click on the scroll when you say, yeah, scroll right or left. Okay, yeah, so we're gonna leave that effect in place. We'll leave that in state. But oh, here we go. We've got a scroll width and step. And those, yeah, so those are gonna be calculated after the fact once we know what the scroll width of the container is. Aha! So Igor was thinking, yeah, this. I think what Igor had was probably correct, and he probably ran into this problem, and that's what I'm just gonna try and evaluate to see if maybe we can avoid putting things into state. It's not a really big deal, but if we can, then it'd be nice. So we need to have access to the scroll width and the scroll step, but we don't get access to those until after the component is mounted and after the component has been updated. And yeah. Go right arrow. So this is based off of the scroll position if it's less than the scroll width minus the scroll step. But I'm thinking that this could actually be calculated differently because we're determining how many visible items there should be. So yeah, we can actually do this quite a bit easier. So what we want to say is if the children count, so we've got the scroll position. So what we're doing here is we're managing scroll position and using that for determining whether to show the left or right arrow. Where I think what we really should be managing is which like what the first child is, like what's the index of what we're showing. I think that's what we really should be looking for. So I might rewrite this a little bit. I should have looked at this closer before I started, because now you're all like, what? He doesn't know what he's talking about. But I'm pretty sure that we could do this without having to mess with scroll position and using scroll position to determine whether or not the left or right arrow should be shown. It should be calculatable based off of the visible items and how many children there are. And then we just keep in state an index of what's the first child that we're displaying. So I don't have a whole lot of time. I got to get going here in a little bit, but I'm going to just try something really quick. Before I do that, what I saw, everything looked fine, especially if you wanted to back up and use stick with using state, and that works fine. The use layout effect, I'm pretty sure can just be a regular use effect. Yeah, so as for the box, yeah, then it's just like regular, we want to keep track of that value or whatever. I'm assuming that you actually are going to do something useful with this value. If you're not, then, or if all you really care about is an on change and then you're going to call something else or whatever, then there's no reason to control this value, and therefore no reason to call set value, and then you just say like props.onSet value or whatever, you know what I mean. So just make sure that you actually need to control the value, because this kind of looping through where it's like, okay, I set the value, so I'm going to set the value up here, and then I'm going to set the value back. Like, it doesn't really make sense to do that by itself. So if you need to manipulate that value in some way, then using a controlled input works fine. But often, all you really care about is knowing when it changes, and you're going to call some props to let those props know that it's changed. So yeah, just make sure that you actually need it to be controlled. In this particular situation, it doesn't need to be controlled, so we could just get rid of it. But I'm guessing this is pretty contrived example. Okay, cool. So let me just try and refactor some things a little bit. So we're going to say first, first child going, or first visible child. Set first visible child index is what I'm going to call it. Index. React use state 0. And then here we're going to map these I'm kind of thinking that we don't even need, well, so I think we're rendering all of the children, and that is probably why the scroll position is the one that's in state. Another thing that you could do is just only render the children that you want, but then you have to do some sort of weird animation thing so that you get that nice scrolling thing. And I honestly don't know how to do that. So what you have is probably better. I mean, I could probably figure it out, but what you have is like it works. So it probably works fine. There's another way to write this where you could just say first visible child index, only render the ones between that index and the visible items. And then when they click, and then just from that, you know whether or not we should show the left arrow. So the left arrow would be visible if it's greater than 0. The right arrow would be visible if the first visible child index plus visible items is less than the children count. So that's how you'd know that. And see, we've got that there. But yeah, here we'll just do it. You'll see why this might be a little more tricky here in just a sec. So we're gonna say first set first visible child index. That's going to happen when we scroll, and instead of setting the scroll position, we're going to set the first visible child index to the index plus 1, and then we'll do the same except -1. And we'll get rid of that, and we'll get rid of all these, and then we'll swap this to be does children have a filter? Yeah, probably. Nope, it's not map. Okay, fine. We're not going to use the React.children utility. We'll just say children dot or wait. Yeah. We'll say children dot filter child index is greater than or equal to first visible child index, and I is less than first visible child index plus the visible children, visible items. Okay, cool. Now close that and then map those like that. I think I'm a couple parentheses off. Dang it. Okay, we've got parentheses there. Yeah, I got one extra. There we go. Okay, cool. So then that gets us what we want, but we no longer get the animation. And that's because React is actually ripping those items out of the DOM. Or actually what it's doing is it's updating each one of these. So what we want to do, oh yeah, there we go. Child.key. Huh. Do these children have a key? So you think they have a key, but they actually don't. So this is an interesting factoid. So you're passing a key to the box, and it has children, so that's fun. But this key prop is not accessible by anyone, even though these are React elements. And here, if we go console.log div key hi, and we look at our console. Oh, there it is. Yeah, there is a key. Maybe it's ref that you don't. Yeah, I think it's just ref. Ref. Yeah, you don't. What? You see ref too? Hold on a second. I must be thinking of something else. Anyway, no, it looks like that's working. That's nice. Sorry. See, I clearly don't know what I'm talking about. Okay, so because you have the key, that's good. Right now, the key is the item because the item is a primitive value, so that works. I guess the key doesn't have to be a primitive value. Yeah, I think that's okay. Actually, I don't know. I can't remember now. This video, this live stream is making me look like a total React noob. So there you go. I don't know what I'm talking about. But yeah, so we're going to take that key. We're going to just forward it on to here. And that key presumably will be different for every single child. And so as I go around here, React is actually going to rip that box out of the DOM and stick the new one in the DOM. So all of that to say, to make this animation what you wanted it to be, you have to use a, like, I don't even know how animation libraries do it, so figure out how the animation libraries are doing it and do that, or just use an animation library to so that the sliding works the way that you want to. So you can either stick with what you had by doing the DOM measurements and stuff, or you can try doing what I did. If I were you, I'd probably just stick with what you have because it was working, and I don't really see too much problems with it, other than the use layout effect could probably just be a use effect. Okay, let me go ahead and I'll answer any questions that people are having. So, your title and description are messed up for Chrome push notifications. What? I don't know what that means. Can't expand push notification to see full description of content being discussed. Sorry, Sean Mitchell, I have no idea what you're talking about. Why do you prefer Windows to write code? What's wrong with Mac? No, so I have a PC that is a dedicated streaming PC, and I use that to offload work on my MacBook so that the PC does all the hard work of encoding the video and uploading it to YouTube, and my MacBook can just focus on what it is that I'm working on. Pretty common thing for gamers, especially where they don't want to make their computer slower by live streaming. It's kind of nice. Okay. Let's just see. Okay, so Igor said, I think I would need use layout effect if I was reading scroll left, which I would need to read after the scroll. So if we go back, this is the original. So I don't like, yeah, I'm not sure I understand what you're suggesting there, Igor. Use layout effect is actually going to run before any updates to the DOM show up, and use effect is going to happen after those things happen. So I think it'll work either way, but this code is going to run before the user sees anything, and so you may as well just do this so the user can see stuff without having to wait for this code to run. In this situation, that really makes not a whole lot of difference, probably, unless getting scroll width is an expensive operation, which maybe it is. But in any case, it probably doesn't make a huge difference. But may as well just use layout effect or use effect because that works, and that's the default for a good reason. Okay. Maybe start off initial render by hiding both arrows, then calculate whether they should be visible after getting container width. So it doesn't look like we can avoid state here. Yeah. Oh, I see what King Daro is suggesting. Yeah, that is another way we could do this. But I wouldn't want to not show the users. Well, yeah, I kind of like the original pretty well. If you're into, like, if this works for you and you want to do, oh, whoa, what the devil? I'm not clicking, the button's not there, but it's still going. Okay, I don't know what that's all about, but where's the on-click being assigned? On-click, left. Oh, haha, you're using opacity. I see. My guess is the reason that you're using opacity is because if you don't render it, it's going to change something. I'm not sure. Oh, because we're using Flexbox, and it would mess up where things are. Yeah, so don't render the button. Instead, you can render an empty div so that you still get your style the way that you want, because that's a funny bug. Okay, let's see. So Igor, sorry, I wasn't looking at the chat while I was streaming, so I'm not sure what you were referring to. That would cause problems for the select input value, right? I'm not sure. So like here, let me show you. If we just get rid of this and get rid of all this and that, then all of the select stuff still works. That's what I was saying, was like, this example doesn't need to have any state at all, because you're not actually doing anything with that value. If you need access to the value, then you just use onChange, and you still don't. So like, let's say you need access to it because you're going to console log it. Then this is sufficient. You still don't need to actually have state for the value. But if you need to make changes to the value, or you need to set the value of the select from the outside, like something else controls that, that's when you need to control the value. So Sean is saying I need to check push notifications for my YouTube videos. Most allow you to expand notifications, view the full title of the video stream. I don't know. I don't know how to change that. Sorry. So David is asking sort of an unrelated question, but I'm going to answer it anyway. PayPal seemed to be the cause of a lot of the in-depth problems you've encountered. Are you worried about not working on real-world apps will hurt the advanced nature of your future content? No, actually, because I will still be working on real applications, just my own things. And so, and I'll be building workshops and a lot of things. Lots of my time at PayPal was dedicated to teaching PayPal engineers anyway. So yeah, I'm not too concerned. And a lot of the things that I actually learned through my open source contribution, which I'm still gonna do. So the thought has occurred to me, but don't worry, I'm still gonna be just as current and useful for you as I have always been. So Sean said, I assume there's a title field and description fields. It seems like yours may be reversed. I don't know. My description was pretty small. So anyway, yes, so Igor is saying use layout effect runs after DOM mutations, but it runs, okay, so I'll try to explain this again. Use layout effect, yes, it does run after DOM mutations, but React runs it synchronously after it does those DOM mutations. So your code is going to run before the user actually sees anything, before the browser has time to paint anything to the screen. Use effect will run asynchronously after those DOM mutations have happened. So this is the way it works. You set state, it calls render, React updates the DOM, React immediately synchronously calls your use layout effect, the browser paints, and then sometime later, whenever it's scheduled to happen, use effect callback will run. So if you don't need to, if you're just doing measurements and you don't need to make any changes to the DOM, then a use effect works better. Though it just occurred to me that your use effect here, this use effect is doing some measurements. So and then you're setting some state, so you're going to actually trigger another re-render. So what I would probably do is how's the scroll position getting set? No, they're separate. Now, so the scroll width and the scroll step, yeah, like those could actually how are those being used? Yeah, they're being used in a use effect. Scroll position is not getting changed though. So yeah, so anyway, yeah, you will be fine using use effect rather than use layout effect, because you're not actually making any DOM mutations that need to happen before the browser paints the DOM mutations. Hopefully that's helpful. Okay, I gotta get going. About the select, I think it would cause problems if I use children filter, then the select would lose state if it wasn't visible. Yes, that's true, because it will get ripped out of the DOM. So if you filter them out and you don't render them, then they'll get ripped out of the DOM. The state that they had will be gone. But it really, like, this is hard because this is pretty contrived, and so I don't know exactly what you're trying to accomplish. All I was saying is that your box right now has no need to keep track of that state. It doesn't need to. And even if we remove the state and you didn't do the filtering, or even if we, yeah, so like, let's say, okay, we're not doing the filtering, you can still get rid of this state and it will maintain its selection, even if you don't have the state. Okay, so you only need to control the state of the select. You only need to control the value if you're going to be making a change to that value from the outside, and you want to imperatively update the select value, or even declaratively. But yeah, just you want to have control over the value. If you're not controlling the value and all you want to know is when the value is changed, then you don't need to have state. You just use the onChange. Okay, I gotta get going. I hope you all have a nice day, and I will see you later. Goodbye.